Welcome to Season 5 of Learning Unlocked. I'm your host, Brit GEEK OUT. As an instructional specialist in Gilbert, Arizona, I'm a total nerd when it comes to classroom strategies and educational pedagogy. Educators are the key holders to unlocking learning for students. Today, my goal is to provide you with resources and tools, the keys, to enable and accelerate learning for all students. Thanks for joining me today. Let's get started. Before we get going today, I just wanted to do a quick reminder that if you have time to rate us and write us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it. The more reviews and ratings we get, the more educators will see and hear our podcast. So if you like what you're hearing and you think others would too, please head over and provide us a review. Thanks. Welcome to episode 44 of Learning Unlocked. Today I am back with Julia Salce, one of our district's instructional specialists, and we're going to extend our knowledge on how the brain learns, which if you are interested in that, you want to go back to season 5, episode 40 is where she really digs into that. But specifically today, we're going to talk about it as it relates to critical thinking and student think and wait time in the classroom. This is part 1 of a 2-part series, and I can't wait to engage in this topic because it is so critical for learners, but it's so applicable for teachers. So I'm really excited if you can't tell. So welcome back to the podcast, Julia.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you on to chat about the topic of critical wait time / think time. I don't know what to call this episode.
Yeah, I use it. I use think time and wait time pretty interchangeably because in my mind, they are the same thing. The official verbiage is wait time.
Okay.
But you will hear me use them interchangeably.
Same here. So we'll have to really decide on the title. I guess wait time, because that's the official.
That's the official.
Okay, critical wait time. This topic really came from a list you and I generated over the summer.
That's right.
We were prepping for our district's new hire induction program, which was kind of a new version of that. And we started making this training about instructional routines.
Right.
And we decided that before you can do instructional routines, and we think we had participation routines, discussion routines, retrieval.
Yeah.
We were like, wait, you can't do those if you don't have the essentials.
Right.
And so we brainstormed this kind of list from our teaching experience, I guess.
All the things that we'd read.
And we made this list and it was like really well received. And so what was on the list? What were our essentials?
We had a call and response. Participation of all students at all times, movement, wait time, and dual coding.
Right. So it was really just us going, okay, these are the things that really need to be in place before you can have great discussion routines, great participation routines, etc.
Right.
And so it was so well received by our mentors and our advisors from the program, as well as all of a sudden principals were like, this is great. This is what we needed. So our boss in the professional growth department was like, you guys need to make classes on some of these topics. And we were like, sure. And so one of the classes that you made recently was on wait time.
That's right.
And so we thought that how great would it be to put this on the podcast so that everybody can kind of get a little bit more knowledge about this. And you found an article that you geeked out on.
I know.
Then I read it and I geeked out on it. So we're going to talk about that article a lot today.
Yeah. And it's old. Rarely do we dig into things that go before the year 2000. But this particular article was from 1986.
Which is the year I was born.
Oh, bless your little heart.
I just looked at it. I was like, oh, yeah. But you said that most of the recent articles you found
reference her studies, her research.
So her research really is the groundwork.
Yes, the accepted research at this time on wait time.
Okay. So we're going to start with a mental exercise that you have your participants do in your course on this topic. So listeners, as you hear these statements, now if you're driving or walking your dog or something, don't close your eyes. But if you're in a place where you can kind of close your eyes and just kind of have a moment to think, as Julia reads these statements, think about which option of the 2 statements she gives you is most like you.
Yeah, and I would say if you can mentally keep track or use your hands, say that statement number 1 is your right hand and statement number 2 is your left hand, or just statement number 1. If you have time to tally in front of you, you can do that as well, 1 and 2. Okay, so when you are in a learning environment, just generically, okay, and I'm going to say disclaimer up front, we all have a little bit of each of these statements in us, depending on what topic we're in, but I want to say generically across the board in a traditional learning environment. So you're sitting at a desk, you're learning from the teacher.
They're not the teacher in this scenario.
You're not the teacher in this scenario, okay? You're the student in this scenario. You're the learner. Okay, so statement number 1, hand in the air, or statement number 2, hand in the chair. So think about which one of those you typically are in a learning environment. Okay, next one. Statement number 1, answer quickly. Statement number 2, ponder, then answer. All right, statement number 1, destination. Statement number 2, journey. Statement number 1, thrive in a traditional classroom. Statement number 2, feel lazy or slow in a traditional classroom. And then finally, statement number 1, jump to learning conclusions. Statement number 2, change your mind easily. So those statements, if you can picture whether you had more statement number 1s or statement number 2s, are representative of the 2 different types of brains that Barbara Oakley, Beth Rajowski, and Terrence Sajowski use in my favorite book ever, Uncommon Sense Teaching. And while they're teaching about the brain, they talk about the race car brain and the hiker brain. And so if you have more statement number 1s, you're the race car brain. Okay, and again, we all have a little bit of both in this depending on the topic. If you are more leaning towards the second statements, you have more of a hiker brain. So race car brains are really good at getting to answers quickly.
Okay, so they're the hand in the air.
They're the hand in the air. They are the sometimes jump to learning conclusions.
Okay.
They are the answer quickly. They are the destination, not the journey.
Because they're trying to get there.
They're trying to get there.
Yeah, okay.
So their eyes are on the end point.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing whatever they can to get there as quickly as possible.
Why do they thrive in the traditional classroom environment?
Well, that's the question. So one of the things that I ask participants in my class is, which type of brain do we think in the traditional classroom is valued the most?
Oh.
And I think back to all the time tests I took, to all of the times that the teacher would ask a question and hand was in the air to answer. And I would say I actually tend to be a little bit more of a race car brain, but I have learned to value the hiker brain.
Okay. All right, so hiker brain, let's go through those. Hiker brain people, if this is you.
Yep, hiker brain people, this is the hand in the chair, mostly because you're pondering before you answer.
Okay.
You typically, if we think about the traditional learning environment, sometimes hiker brains receive a lot of disciplinary correction or disciplinary action because it appears that they're not participating or that they're refusing to do their work, or
they're zoning out.
They're not paying attention when really their brain is on a journey, whatever stimulated that journey. And so the hiker brain is going to move a lot slower through, like if the teacher asks a question, race car brain, boom, right there, hand in the air, here's my answer.
Right.
Hiker brain is thinking, taking this. In my class, I use this image of a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
A mountain, if critical thinking were a mountain and the solution to some type of complex problem is at the top, the race car brain is taking the straightest shot up to the top.
Right.
Going through whatever they have to that's necessary, but nothing more.
Yeah.
The hiker brain is taking the zigzag route up the mountain.
They're enjoying the critical thinking journey.
They are enjoying the critical thinking journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about that, when we have those 2 different types of brains in our classroom, then we have to think about, okay, how do we meet the needs of both those brains? So you have to think about what are the benefits and disadvantages. Well, your race car brains get to answers and they can move forward much quicker.
Right.
However, they can't always fill in the details because they zoomed past all the details that took them there. The hiker brain, the benefit is that they have a richer, deeper thinking experience. The disadvantage is that sometimes they get overlooked because everyone's moved on.
Right.
And they're still on this journey to the first question, and the teacher's on question number 7 at this point.
Right.
And sometimes they fall behind and aren't able to keep up. And so they need kind of a more structured approach to their thinking to make sure that they can get to a solution within a set amount of thinking time.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask listeners to just take a minute and think to themselves, especially in their learning environment. We all kind of gone through this educational system at some point in our lives. Do you feel like you're more of a race car brain? Do you feel like you're more of a hiker brain? And there's no judgment.
There is no judgment. But there is a really interesting thing that said, and I'm going to say I'm a race car brain most of the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
There is a little bit of a judgment in the book on race car brains, but at the same time, this acknowledgement that sometimes time matters.
Yeah.
We don't have all the time in the world. Like if you and I had all the time in the world to to write a book or develop courses, and there were no time limits, the work would be so much different.
It would be deeper and different.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that what we created quickly wasn't good.
Right. Yeah.
So he says in his book, there's this guy that actually says he's a major scientist, I think. He was talking about this guy and he's super successful, but he was always slow.
Mm.
And he realized that when he later in his career, he could actually solve problems better than the race car brain people that were his colleagues because of his slower, more flexible way of thinking.
Mm.
He was always hitting the wrong point. Like if you think about zigzagging up the mountain,
right?
Like, nope, this isn't the summit. Nope, this isn't the summit, as they zigzag back and forth till they arrive. Well, it says, so to quote him, it says, so these race car brains tended to jump to conclusions with speedy answers. And when they were wrong, they were unable to correct their mistakes. Instead, they used their intelligence to find ways to rationalize why they must have been right after all. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so me.
Which we've seen in you see that in students too, though, right?
Yeah.
Those race car brain kids are like, no, well,
this is the answer.
This is why, and they can't, and they're like, but it is because, then they really,
and then they'll take whatever intelligence they have that they know to be true and try and manipulate their response. And that can be a disadvantage, especially if you're in a field where you're really like paving new paths and discovering new things. There are going to be incorrect answers. So the hiker brain is much better at accepting this didn't work. What's next? What do I do next? Yeah.
So what do race car brains value?
So race car brains value speed and accuracy.
Okay. And then you have that they're more declarative learners. So what does that mean?
So race car brains are doing so much of what happens in their working memory. And so this is, if you have listened to the previous podcast, this is the octopus that's catching all the learning, doing all the thinking. So basically your prefrontal cortex is where you do like that conscious thinking. Mm-hmm. And so race car brains are quick in that working memory. They pull whatever they need and they go. Where the hiker brains take in their learning, more procedurally. So that sensory experience. And so you can connect back to that going up the mountain again. The race car is taking a straight shot up the mountain. The race car is able to find what they need to get up the mountain, but that's it, right? And so find what they need to think about it to get to an answer. The hiker brain is taking the scenic route. Got it. And is looking at different things they've experienced and want to experience the learning more. So they're going to love hands-on learning because it's slower, it's more inquiry-based, and so they get time to think in that type of situation. Okay. Where your race car brains might get frustrated in those learning experiences because there is no immediate correct answer. And I can totally think of kids in my classes that I've had before. Right. They're like, Miss Salce, no.
What is it?
What is it? What do you want?
Right. Yeah. It's a struggle for them. But there's always that one or two kids in their group that are like, no. We got this. We can figure this out because they're the hiker brains. Yeah. And they're the ones that can coach them through that. Sidebar reminds me of my husband and I in planning a vacation. So in planning a vacation, I'm a race car brain. If we're going to Disneyland, we will be there at 7:55 when the doors open. And we're going to do all the things because I paid good money. That's a Brittany vacation.
There's a plan.
A chase vacation is a hiker vacation where there's no plan. And we're just going to go with where the wind takes us and see what the journey is. So I think it also works with personalities too.
Absolutely.
It kind of feeds into the student's personality and what drives them in their learning experience. So I think that this next question is going to make a lot of sense to a lot of teachers because they're going to go, okay, now that I know this about their brains, I can visually see this with their personalities. And so you're going to be able to see, you're going to look in your classroom and you go, okay, since my classroom has both race car brains and hiker brains, and they both have their positives and negatives, right? How do we support both?
Wait time.
Okay, see? Here we are. This is why it's a critical and crucial episode. Wait time.
Yeah, so the idea is that what we really want the race car drivers to do is slow down and take in some of the details. Mm-hmm. Really pay attention to what they're experiencing along the way to the correct answer, because it will help them elaborate on their answer. It will also help catch them before they land on something they are certain is correct. If they have to slow down, if the teacher won't take the answer right away, they will automatically like reprocess a little bit. And if they've made a mistake or missed something, they're more likely to catch it, right?
Okay.
And we want to speed up
those hikers.
The hiker brains, and not necessarily make them think faster, but we want to give them time to think.
Right.
So that they have that space, so that when a teacher asks a question, they know, like, I have a moment to actually think about this,
right? To
travel through my brain.
I can keep up with the race car brain because my teacher's allowing me that extra few seconds.
Correct.
To hike a little bit faster.
Correct. And I can bring my really great hiking journey to the table.
Right.
Because really what great ideas are left behind when we take student answers so quickly, which if you look at the research, it says when teachers ask students questions, they typically wait less than 1 second for a student response.
Which we see all the time.
Yeah.
And super guilty of.
If
I look back at asking questions, not only were some of my questions not quality questions.
That's a whole different podcast.
That's a whole different podcast. But not only was I not asking quality questions all the time, but I was also just not comfortable with silence. Right. I wanted them to answer almost for my own validity. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that in part 2 when we talk about teacher response. But yeah, I mean, just upping that wait time that we're going to get to later is huge. So there's 2 different types of wait time that we get from the research. Wait time 1 and wait time 2. So what's the difference between them? Can you define them for us?
So wait time 1 is the time a teacher waits after they pose a question.
Okay.
So teacher poses a question, wait time.
Okay.
Then wait time 2 is the time that the teacher waits after a student has responded. And what's fascinating is that the research shows that wait time 2 is even more important than wait time 1.
Okay, so can you give me a for example?
So for example, if I'm asking students, what do you think the character was feeling at this point in the story? Wait time 1 is that pause.
Okay.
Giving all students a chance to think.
I'm the student and I respond after your wait time. I say, I think the character was feeling really anxious and frustrated.
Yeah. So 1 of 2 things can happen at this point. I can be like, oh, I totally agree with you. They seemed really anxious at this point, right? Why do you think they were anxious at this point? And I jump in, evaluate your response, and then twist it back into another question. But I have not given the rest of the class an opportunity to think about what you just said.
Got it. And why is that an issue?
It's an issue because it doesn't promote, it basically teaches students that what each of them has to say isn't important. Mm-hmm. And so if they say what the teacher wants, it's a two-way conversation just between 2 people.
Yeah. So you and I had this great conversation about the text and everybody else was just
waiting for the next question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So wait time 2 is really important because it helps facilitate that building of ideas off of each other in a classroom, and you can get to much deeper thinking because of it.
So instead, let's just role play. I say, I think that the character was really anxious and frustrated. What would you do as the teacher? Instead of jumping in, you would do what?
So I'd be really careful not to give any type of evaluative, gotta watch your facial expressions, but just kind of a thinking face. And really, I think, especially if I were working with younger students, there would be like a thinking pose. You know, I might put my finger up underneath my chin and just sit there and nod my head like I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. And that's their cue. Like, oh, she's thinking, what was she thinking about? Wait, what did that student say? And they'll be able to pull into memory what that student said. If I do like that's interesting, that feels evaluative, right? It kind of cuts off the thinking of the others. So some type of pause indicating that the teacher's thinking about what the student said and that the students can think about what the other student said.
So for the amount of time for the pause, and we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I feel like it's an appropriate time to do so. Wait time 1, what's the ideal golden ticket time?
So minimum is 3 seconds.
Okay.
And that seems like nothing.
I bet you it seems like an eternity.
It does seem like an eternity.
Have a bunch of eyeballs looking at you.
And the research shows that teachers who make a conscious effort to do this are really great at it for 4 weeks. And then at 4 weeks, something falls off the wagon. Like
interesting.
Yeah. And so they have to, I told my participants this weekend, I said, if I were you, if you plan to start just waiting longer when you ask questions, like set a reminder in your calendar
for 4 weeks
from now. Hey, are you still doing this?
Yeah.
Because it's especially if, I would say for those of us who've been teaching longer, there's a pacing
that you
how we talk to kids.
Have, yeah.
Yes, and there's this pacing that you've developed, and so it's hard because I've tried to do it more in my classes.
Oh, so me too. Yeah, ever since I read this article, I'm like, okay, Brit, practice what you preach.
I know. Yeah. So yeah, 3 seconds
minimum. Okay,
but 3 seconds.
Is there
in
a
the
maximum?
research? It just depends on the question, the task, the prompt that's being asked.
Because I'm assuming too long, you're going to lose some kids.
Yeah, okay. So it's interesting. Too long, you end up with potential behavioral issues, but you have behavioral issues if you take the answers too quickly.
Right.
And so there is kind of a magic window of like 3. I mean, most things I think it refers to in here 3 to 5 seconds.
I saw 3 to 5 seconds too. I think 3 to 5 seconds is a good amount of time.
Good wait time, unless you're having them to jot, dot, or write in response. I think if you're adding a layer to like collect their thinking, you would of course give them longer.
But just posing a question, they don't have anything in front of them. They're just thinking in their brain.
Yeah.
Okay. And then wait time number 2, what's the time?
Same thing.
So 3 to 5.
Yep. It's the magic window.
Yep. And again, you're trying not to give an evaluative face.
Yeah.
Or verbal opinion for wait time number 2.
You're showing that you've accepted the response for consideration, right? But that you're not evaluating whether or not.
Gosh, I really have to fix my face.
Yeah.
My face shows everything. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's good because you want the kids to hear what other kids are saying.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's dive into this article that we both geeked over. All right. It's called Wait Time, Slowing Down May Be a Way of Speeding Up. And it's by author Mary Budd Rowe, would you say? And she provided a huge insight into how critical wait time is for students. And so we talked about the average wait time and the golden number in the classroom. And so what is the effect on students? And so she goes through several effects on students, and then she goes through several effects on teachers. So part 2, we're going to dive into the effects on teachers. Yeah. But today we're going to focus on, hey, if you move that 0.9 seconds is that the average is, right? Yeah. Less than 1 second. And I know some teachers are probably listening to this going, oh my gosh, that's me. I don't, you know what I mean? Did a lot of participants in the course, do they say like, is it like a aha moment?
Yeah, it was. And actually it was kind of funny because I knew what was going to be coming on the hiker and race car brains.
Right.
And you could immediately see when I was asking even just the questions who the hiker brains were. So boom, boom, boom. And the other people at the table were still thinking. And then you could see that even like this recognition that they needed think time because they were kind of shutting other people down.
See, that was good. Yeah. So I'm assuming that's happening here is where they're listening. So I'm just going to recap before we go through these awesome effects on students that happen if we just move from that average. Yeah. Oh, and I highlighted that too. I'll have you read that. But 0.9 seconds, if we just move from 0.9 seconds to 3 to 5, we're going to have a huge effect on our students' learning. So in the front, she's got a great passage. Go ahead and read that.
Yeah, this is, I think, the summation, like the claim of when she looked at all the research. And she says, if teachers can increase the average length of the pauses at both points, namely after a question, wait time 1, and even more important, after a student response, wait time 2, to 3 seconds or more, there are pronounced changes, usually regarded as improvements, in student use of language and logic, as well as in student and teacher attitudes and expectations.
I think it's funny that we read this separately and we both highlighted the same spot.
It's a bold claim.
It is a
it's
bold
a really
claim.
bold claim. So she digs into that deeper by like delineating what those actual effects are on students.
Especially because it's not only just our language and logic, but it's also our attitude.
That one's huge.
And that
teacher
one
expectations.
Huge with the attitude. And you can see it in classes where teachers start to implement more wait time. The students' attitude and behavior and disruptions.
Well, I think it's it's the difference between a classroom where a teacher is teaching to the race cars only. Right. And the teacher knows that, and they're just moving on. Like, I know this kid's going to raise their hand, or this kid's going to raise their hand, and like not in an intentionally bad way, but just in the fact that I'm teaching this lesson. I think once the kids hear the right answer, they're good to go. I don't realize until after I read this that those kids aren't even listening to the right answer. Right.
Yep.
So,
all right. So first effect on students, she says the length of student responses increases between 300 and 700% in some cases, depending on the study. What is she saying there?
She's saying that when you give students time to think, they can say more. Right? I mean,
I just cannot. The 300
to 700%.
That's just a ridiculous amount.
By basically 1 second increase in wait time. First of all, that's a great testament to the abilities of our brains.
Yes.
Right? And what it can do in a second.
What it can do in a second.
And for me, seeing that, like, this isn't hard. This doesn't require major prep on my part.
Oh, no.
I don't have to do anything extra.
This is like applicable tomorrow.
Yes. I'm like, I just need to zip it.
And then 300 to 700% probability of more elaboration from your kids.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That I read that and I wrote what with a bunch of question marks and exclamation points, because that just is a crazy, crazy statistic. Number 2, she says more inferences are supported by evidence and logical argument with this increase in wait time.
Yeah. So I think there's, in my opinion, when we put together what we know from what the Uncommon Sense teaching book says and what we're reading here, is that the race car brains, if they're the answers that we're taking all the time, they're the ones that can give us some type of answer in 0.9 seconds, right? They jump to those conclusions, they leap to them. And then they might wonder, is this right? But they first just like throw it out there. So the think time,
they almost have to throw it in reverse most of the time.
Like the think time for them, I feel like backs them up a little bit. Well, wait, is this right?
Yeah.
And then they can think of like, actually, is there evidence for this? And we get the hiker brains into the conversation. And remember, they're the ones that zigzag across this critical thinking mountain. And they've got these deep, rich experiences.
Right.
They don't always have time to pull all of that forward. So the think time, now we're going to get more evidence and logical argument because the hikers have also joined the conversation.
All right. Number 3, the incidence of speculative thinking increases.
Yes, they start asking more questions, right? Or they start questioning or wondering while they're responding, which will lead to more questions, which we'll get to in just a moment. But I think they start to realize, again, the race car brains have backed up. Well, did she mean this? Or what did she mean by this? Wait, I think we could break this apart then and we could say this, right? Their brain is going to start backing up and filling in the pieces.
Right.
And again, those hiker brains, that's how they travel. What did she mean by this? That's their first thought,
That's their first thought.
And then, if it was this, then I think I could go this way to this. If it was this, I go this way, right? So they're just reverse engineering here.
And doing it to get together. I also was thinking if their speculative thinking increases, the rigor is increasing.
Absolutely.
So when I read that, I thought, we know that the cornerstone of rigor, and I need to probably cite this because it's not from me. So I'll throw it in there. Julia's laughing because I turned behind me to look to see if it was on the bookshelf behind me. But they say the cornerstone of rigor is curiosity, and the only way you get curiosity in a classroom is questioning. And so it's almost like this little snowball effect, right? Where if you have better wait time, then you're going to get more curiosity and more questioning, which is going to lead to higher levels of rigor. So I'm like, this is like kind of a silver bullet.
It is.
With not a lot of prep.
No.
So, okay.
Just a lot of intentionality to.
And remembering.
Yes.
And it's hard because we want to talk. That's what our job is.
I know. A lot of us came into teaching because we do enjoy being the sage on the stage. Mm-hmm. That's not what makes a good teacher, but we do enjoy having the attention because we speak well and we have stories we want to share and and things we want to explain. But we do have to learn to.
And we like that bouncing off of the kids and like that.
Yes,
and
we're having a great time playing basketball one-on-one. Right. But the rest of the team is not playing.
She's full of analogies, folks. I love it. All right, number 4. So again, we're still talking about increasing that wait time from 0.9 seconds to 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. If we do that, the number of questions asked by students increases, and then the number of experiments they propose increases.
Yeah. So typically, any questions that students would ask in a lower think time classroom are just clarifying questions about procedure and directions.
How many scissors do I need for my group or whatever? Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But under this experiment, watching what happens in the classrooms with the 3-second regimen of wait time, we see that the questions become about the topic itself. And they start to propose, but what if this and this and this happened? And that's where you get that curiosity piece, which drives the rigor.
Right. So statement number 5, student-to-student exchanges increase and teacher-centered show and tell behavior decreases.
Okay. Right underneath that statement, she has an explanation. And the first line of this one, I love. She's showing me that she highlighted the same thing.
And then I wrote wow next to it.
Yes. And I did it in my important pink color.
Oh, so Julia's annotations are
color-coded.
Color-coded.
She says, under very short wait times, students compete for turns to perform for the teacher.
Let's say it one more time.
I'm going to say it again. Under very short wait times, students compete for turns to perform for the teacher.
Yeah.
So that what you're seeing is that, again, and who are the ones competing? The ones who can keep up the pace, which is the race car thinkers, right? The hiker brain types. And again, it's going to vary by subject. You may be a race car brain in one subject and a hiker brain in another.
Oh, for sure.
And so, yes, I can list where I'm
at in each one. Yeah.
Or even in my job, I tend to be more of a hiker brain in my career.
Yes.
And more of a race car brain in learning in general. Anyway, I digress. So student-to-student exchanges increase. And so why is that? Well, we've actually made them stop and listen to each other.
Right.
Essentially that's it.
And that's wait time 2, right? Yep. Is where they're stopping and having to listen to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that show and tell behavior on the teacher decreases.
Right. And so without that, they really don't listen to each other because they don't have, it's not that they don't want to, they just don't have time to.
They don't have time to, and there's no incentive to. The teacher, again, if they're just trying to perform for the teacher and tell the teacher what the teacher wants to hear, once the correct statement is thrown out, there's no reason to continue weighing it in your brain.
Right.
Right? If the teacher said, no, that's right, it's done. It's dead, it's done, you move on.
Right. Okay. Number 6, failures to respond decrease.
I love this.
Me too.
It says, I don't know or no responses are often as high as 30% in classrooms with mean wait times 1 and 2 of 1 second. Okay, that average. That changes with the increase in wait time.
Right.
So you're, again, who are the failure to response? The hiker brains.
Right.
They have a chance.
Yep.
They have a chance to think and they have a chance to jump in.
Right. And then I really like these questions. The teachers were asking what if a student doesn't actually know? And will wait time just be embarrassing? Or, what would happen in those circumstances? And her suggestion was you could always provide a pass option.
And it says, a student who has that option and exercises it at the end of 3 seconds is 70% more likely to be back in the discussion spontaneously before the period is over.
Yep, because the anxiety was relieved, right? I just don't know pass.
Yeah.
So I guess because well, this sounds great. If I give kids 3 to 5 seconds of wait time and still no one responds, or nobody gets there, right? And I call on someone, are they embarrassed? What happens? Well, give them a pass option because most likely a race car brain is dying. The race, it's like Hermione Granger.
Yeah.
From Harry Potter, right? Yes. She's I know the answer. And
Yeah.
their hand comes up, right?
Mhm.
And so it's just give them some time and give them an option to pass if they don't know.
Well, and I would pair, to quote Wendy Peterson, our colleague, I would pair wait time with random calling.
Oh, and I was going to bring up random calling, so I'm glad you did.
Well, there we go. See? So if you're giving wait think time, you've given students an opportunity to really process and come up with some type of response. And then you randomly call on a student because you're going to ruin your whole think time, wait time, because your hiker brains are still going to be a little reluctant.
Right.
But because if you just take hands after that wait time, you're still potentially only calling on your race cars.
Well, and back up a bit. We can, if you have a call and response method or some type of random calling, you do not pull it first. So if it's a popsicle stick, whatever it is.
Yeah, because who has to think? Only the name you called. Right. If Brit's my teacher and she draws
so many times.
She draws Johnny's name out. Johnny, what's the answer to blah blah blah? What would you say is blah blah blah? Johnny's the one thinking.
Johnny's like
awkwardly on the spot, right? It's like I think it's like
Johnny on the spot.
Yeah. I think of the detective that's like, Johnny, where were you on the night of blah blah blah, right? Everybody else is tuned
the light shined on him.
Yep.
So yeah, sorry, I had to back up because when we say random calling, so many times my teachers are like, yeah, I'm using random calling. And I'm like, no,
not like that.
Not like that. So when you're using it, it's great.
Yeah.
But you got to use it.
Question, then call. Question, call.
Question, call.
With wait time in between.
So now you go.
Yeah.
So we call, we answer, we ask a question. Then we give
wait time. And
3
then
seconds.
we can draw a popsicle stick.
Draw a popsicle stick or a playing card or whatever you're using. Okay.
So I really like the next one, which is disciplinary moves decrease.
Yes.
And this does seem somewhat counterintuitive, right?
I actually wrote, you would think longer wait time, ...
Yeah.
You would think it
longer,
would be.
yeah, would cause more disciplinary issues. And I love this statement here. She says, it appears that fast-paced teacher questioning is a device for maintaining control of behavior.
Yeah.
When in actuality, it's inhibiting the type of thinking that the teacher is seeking from the students.
Right.
So really the idea is when you, especially when you pair random calling with it.
Oh, yeah.
When you give all students an opportunity to enter the game.
Yep.
Right. And to think and to process. And honestly, and she doesn't go into like methodology or strategies here, but you know, we take and layer what we know into this. If you pair wait time with a sentence frame, you provide some response stems, you show students how to take jot dots. So if they're the student, so a lot of times my hand would go straight up in the air. I wanted to answer, and I was afraid I was going to forget it if I had to listen to what the other kids were saying.
Yeah.
So I would like tune out even if I wasn't called on. So jot dots are a great way, like encourage kids, okay, if you have an answer that you want to tell me right now, write it down.
Right.
Okay, and then it's there and you won't forget it, because there is a lot of anxiety around that idea of forgetting.
Of holding it and not being able to listen
at the same time.
I think that also goes to kind of just that old school think, pair, share. Right? Where a lot of kids never ever did the think part. You would pose a question.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, we're going to do a think, pair, share.
Yeah.
And what do they automatically do? Turn and talk.
Yeah.
They pair, share.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, there's a think point.
Yeah.
And I think so even in that, you have to scaffold kids in your strategies where there is already think stuff built into it.
Yeah. You need to teach them what think time means.
Right.
What structures are available to them. You know, if it's a really deep question that you know they could do some significant thinking about, make them all write.
Have them write it. I love the think, write, pair, share twist on it. That's like the way I would do it, because I was never successful with think, pair, share. And as an English teacher, I was like, well, you're going to write in between. So they would think, okay, now write. Okay, now pair, share.
Yeah.
Which was like the way to do it. Like, that's how I could use that. But there's a lot of strategies we do. Go-Mo, all of those things could really benefit from wait time.
Well, and even if you look at it, when we do them, when we structure them for teachers and our different classes, it always starts with like Go-Mo starts with ideas on sticky notes, right? So you've already generated your ideas before you start interchanging with others.
Right. Yeah. And I do think this is a good time to talk about whiteboard holdups as a strategy, because if we're looking at kids that, start to draw on their whiteboards or have bad behaviors, it's probably because maybe our wait time is too long, or we're not using it appropriately because we're just doing like, okay, this person go. Right? This person go. And so the kid that can't keep up
stops trying. Right. Well, and I do want...
And now they're just drawing random pictures.
Put in a disclaimer right now. Like if you've been a teacher and you recognize at this point in time right now, oh boy, I don't use think or wait time like intentionally very often. And you've been taking all year so far those race car responses and moving on.
Yeah.
You will have to retrain
your kiddos,
your hiker kids.
Yeah.
Right. Those kids that are just, as you were saying, for example, if I've always been having kids do like math problem holdups or something on a whiteboard.
Right.
And I've never like given everybody a true chance to think through it and made sure everybody has a response first. They just hold up when they're done. I say, okay, hold up, let's move on. Hold up, let's move on.
Because that's what we see a lot is just when you're done, hold it up and I'll check it.
Yeah.
It's just not, you have to like give everybody time to do it. Yeah. Do not hold up your whiteboard until I say go or whatever the word is.
Because if I'm that kid that just every time I try it, I'm never done quick enough, it's just not worth my energy. Plus the continued failure of not being able to keep up is a little too much of a hit to my amygdala. So I'm just going to mess around and doodle anyway. Now, if you've already created those types of students, you're going to have to work with retraining them and kind of re-earning that trust or that credibility with them that you're going to give them the time they need and you're going to value their ideas and input. So there's going to be some things you have to lay beforehand. This is best implemented from the start of the year. Right.
And then you also have to retrain your race car brains.
To stop holding their boards up.
Yeah. To
stop
like
holding they can't even.
You know, so it's like they're going to have that self-control and, you know, of just being like, okay, wait. Even when you have your shouter answer people, you got your blurters. Yep, you gotta retrain them too.
Gotta give everybody a strategy that fits their like the blurters need jot dots right away, right?
The blurters need jot dots.
I think the hikers might need some sentence stems.
Yep, to get them to their destination a bit quicker.
Yes, to at least provide some little marks along the trail of where they should be headed.
Going up their mountain. Yep. So there's strategies embedded in this that may take a little bit longer to implement, but I think teachers will see that naturally.
Yeah, if you've not done it. My worry is if you've not been using wait or think time and you go to start using it tomorrow.
Yeah, you're going to be like, oh, wait.
And you're like, well, they're still messing around. See, he's just drawing pictures. That's why, like, it doesn't work. It doesn't change anything. Well, no, he's been trained to draw pictures at this point. So you're going to have to untrain him by doing some scaffolding. But from the beginning of the year, it should be much, much easier.
Yeah. Or even, you know, as we go into winter break soon, start fresh in January.
Yeah.
You know, there might be a little bit of you know, you might have to do some retraining, but it's not like tomorrow you're walking in cold.
It's a trust thing, right? It's the credibility piece. Does the teacher actually value what I have to say, or do they only value the right answer?
Yeah. And that goes back to your teacher credibility, which is huge for kids.
Yeah. And it's easy to gain their trust at the very beginning of the year when they don't know you.
Yep.
But if you've already done things to kind of decrease that, you just have to fight a little bit harder to get it back. So I would just throw that caveat out there that like it will take a little time mid-year to make this change, but it will happen.
It will happen. And everybody will be better for it, right? All right, number 8. The variety of students participating voluntarily in discussion increases. Also, the number of unsolicited but appropriate contributions by students increases.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden we've got these kind of natural discussions
I may start with a popsicle stick, but because I've implemented wait times for wait time 2 and made it clear that I want them to bounce off of each other, they might naturally begin bouncing off of each other.
Right.
Like I might pull who starts it, but from there, they'll have a tendency, according to her research, they do have a tendency to go.
Because they want to all of a sudden impromptu do responses.
And I love this. She said the number of students usually rated as poor performers who become active participants increases. Interestingly, this change in verbal activity gradually influences teacher expectations for students because more students do more task-related talking.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the first step to having larger class discussions, which a lot of teachers shy away from because they don't think the kids can have on-test discussions.
Right, because they've only asked one and done questions.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then number 9, and this is huge, Student confidence, as reflected in fewer inflected responses, increases.
I love this. So the inflected responses, she says, is that that inflection is like, is that what you want? So when Johnny answers the question, is it the Civil War? Yeah, right. The Civil War is how they answer.
You want the
that's the I'm unsure about what I'm saying, but which shows a lack of confidence. And what she saw in her studies was that 3-second wait time actually reduced that inflected type of response, where it's kind of that caveat of like, I don't really know, but okay.
Well, because they're trying to again perform for you,
right?
So they're using that because they're like, you're waiting, there's silence. Mm-hmm. The race car brain wants to perform.
Right.
Is it the Civil War?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And those go, but their confidence,
mm-hmm.
now it's the Civil War. But they've had that time to think back.
Well, and they would, going back to some of the other statements, it would be, it's the Civil War because blah, blah, blah. They automatically are going to their because.
Yes.
Their evidence. We're doing Wizard of Oz in our house right now. It's because.
Yep.
Right?
They'll be able to do the evidence right away.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just being like, it's the Civil War. All right, the last one for effects on students with just transitioning from 0.9 seconds to 3 is the achievement improves on written measures where the items are cognitively complex.
Well, because let's be honest, what is writing? True writing,
mm-hmm.
right? With cognitively complex, writing prompts,
right,
is higher level critical thinking,
right? Yep.
And in essence, that writing is its own kind of discussion in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've done that all along through the learning process, it's going to naturally come out that way mm-hmm. in written expression.
Right. I mean, we all know when kids are writing, they are having, even with, let's say you're having them pull textual evidence,
mm-hmm.
their writing is a conversation with those authors.
Right.
In their head, what they're saying, what this claim is, this is what I think about it, this is how it relates to the topic sentence I chose, right? Or whatever it is.
Right.
So their writing just becomes more conversational, but it's better.
It is much better.
Because it's
richer.
It's richer, it's deeper. And so their achievement, not only in discussion increases, not only in confidence increases,
mm-hmm. not only in behavior,
increases, but they also have better student-to-student relationships.
Mm-hmm.
They're gaining trust between you and like the
mm-hmm.
teacher.
Yeah.
And they can write better. So this is a huge, and I told you guys at the beginning of this podcast episode, this is important. And there's a whole nother section of this article. We're going to get to it in the next episode.
Yeah. This article was a powerhouse one. I'm kind of upset that I haven't seen it until now.
I know, it's really great.
I think we take wait time for granted.
I think we do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Those too easy. We've got lots of other flashy
fun
things. Yeah, I think this year one of the things I've done, really tried to do, is return to the simple.
Mm-hmm.
The simple overlooked things, like I bring up all the time in my brain class, the KWL chart.
Yeah.
Right. When I was first taught the KWL chart in my teacher prep program, this is the dumbest thing ever.
Right.
Well, now that I understand the brain, this simple thing is actually quite brilliant.
Yes.
Right. And beneficial. So I think time is one of those things.
Yep.
Just give them time to think. Okay. They're thinking while I'm asking the question.
Uh-huh. And while I'm giving them the notes, right? They're thinking because they're writing them down.
Or when they were reading the text, weren't they thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the thinking?
No. These are all things that we just take for granted.
Yeah.
All right, rapid fire.
Oh,
I changed them because you were already on the season.
No, and I'm not going to lie. I cheated sometimes in the past. I've not cheated today.
Today was not that day.
It is not that day.
All right, so rapid fire questions, and the first one's always on topic. So wait time, fill in the blank. Wait time is?
Well, I just said simple,
mm-hmm.
but complex. So I go back to, it's one of those, it's taken for granted.
I like it.
Okay.
You already said it.
I said it.
Yeah, wait time is taken for granted. Number 2, what is your biggest teaching pet peeve?
Oh my. Are you asking pet peeves of things that teachers do, or my teaching pet peeve things that students do?
No, teachers.
Okay. Worksheets.
Mm-hmm.
Worksheets. I can't handle the worksheets.
Marsha Tate. Worksheets don't grow dendrites. Go look up the book. I'll link it on. And of course, I'm going to link this article. But yes, go get that book. All right. Get your phone out.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Describe the last photo you took using your phone.
No, that was this morning.
Okay.
While I was drinking my coffee.
Okay.
I love to crochet.
Okay.
Again,
Yes.
it's kind of an obsession at this point. And so I was going through Instagram, and I follow a lot of different crochet people on Instagram, and I found these darling little gingerbread men.
Ooh.
So I took a screenshot of the gingerbread men for the holiday season coming up, and then after that are the pictures of all of the directions for how to make these gingerbread men. So those are the last pictures. Yeah, awesome. Screenshots of how to make gingerbread men.
Cute. All right. If you could be any fictional character, who would you be and why?
Well, that's hard too. I am a huge Anne of Green Gables fan.
Okay.
And I always wanted to be Anne. So it would be Anne, just because she came from like such difficulty.
I love Anne.
And she found such love and peace, not just with the family she had, but with the surrounding environment she was in, the community, nature, and just like worked hard
but was quirky.
Dyed her hair green.
I know. Right? I kind of like that she's like Anne of Green Gables, but she's a little edgy.
And accidentally gave the alcohol to the friend when she came over, thinking it was the
it was the punch, you know.
Yeah.
So she's a little
cherry cordial. Yeah. So
all right, would you eat? And this is appropriate for the time of year. Would you rather eat cake, pie, or ice cream?
This is an easy question. Cake, hands down. I am all about the bready stuff.
Okay,
I like to chew my dessert.
Are you the person that doesn't like fruit in their dessert?
I do not like fruit in my dessert.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember one of you.
No warm fruit.
No warm fruit. So it's all about, what's your favorite cake?
The Pillsbury or the Duncan Hines yellow cake mix. Homemade one that's
Old
not really
one.
homemade.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
simple, like cheater homemade.
Crack your eggs and put your water in it.
With chocolate frosting.
Chocolate frosting. Okay. If listeners want to learn more about critical thinking and wait time, where should they look?
So I would start with this article because she does a really good job of explaining what wait time is and all of the different effects that it can have. And then I feel like the next step is jumping to, what are the strategies? What are the things we can implement and do right now to help increase that wait time?
Right.
And I found several good articles on Edutopia that do just that. They reference her research and then they say like, here's what to do. So I don't have the titles in front of you, but I'll make sure we link a couple of those.
Okay, so we'll link all of that stuff in the show notes. All right, thank you for coming on, and we'll do part 2, which is really the effects of teachers.
Yeah, the effect on teachers.
Yeah, the wait time effect on teachers. So, all right,
thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Learning Unlocked and finding out more about the importance of wait time. If you've listened today as a GPS educator, you can receive PD recertification credit by visiting the Employee Hub page through the GPS portal and navigating to professional growth and then selecting PGD's podcast Google site. Just a reminder that we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GPS Prof Growth. That's at GPS PROF GROWTH. For more information, the resources from this episode, and also all of the links to the articles, and especially the article that we geeked out over, please visit our website at learningunlocked.libsyn.com/website. We are distributed by Libsyn to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Audible. Episodes are also available on our PGD YouTube channel under playlists. Our intro and outro music are licensed from Melody Loops. Thanks again, key holders. Keep unlocking curiosity, creativity, and innovation with your students. Stay kind and courageous, and I will see you back here for part 2. Welcome to episode 44 of Learning Unlocked. Today I'm back with Julia Salce, one of our district's Okay.